Hi, I'm Jared Lombardo, and welcome to episode 4 of the Conventional Podcast. This episode is the first of 2 episodes about the JoCoCruise, an annual event that I've attended for the last 2 years. Cruise attendees are called Sea Monkeys, and there's a daily newsletter delivered to all staterooms about the day's activities called The Sea Monkey. We recorded this interview during the 2018 cruise, but since the event was ongoing, we were briefly interrupted by a ship phone call in the middle.
My name's Drew Westphal, and I'm the Chief of Operations of the JoCoCruise, which is an annual nerd cruise where we do nightly music and comedy, 24/7 tabletop gaming, and guest-organized panels and events called the Shadow Cruise throughout the ship. And every week that we do the JoCoCruise, we actually have more programming than there are hours in all the days added together. So it's more than a 3-ring circus, and I work to make that possible. And I've been working on the cruise for about 8 years now, and it's a really fun time.
So how did you get started being involved with this particular event, or also more broadly with event management?
Well, I guess it's sort of a long and circuitous story, but it started with, so Jonathan was in the Yale Whiffenpoofs, America's oldest collegiate a cappella singing group, and I was too, about 15 years after him. Jonathan was also in a group called the Spizwinks, which is an underclassmen a cappella group at Yale, which I was in as well. And so when we were celebrating the Whiffenpoofs' 100th anniversary, because I shared the same sort of a cappella trajectory as Jonathan, we had this fantastic drunk old alumnus who was like, "You are the perfect guy to get Jonathan to come, and when you get Jonathan to come, just see if you can get him to bring Hodgman." And so the whole play was to get Hodgman and Jonathan to MC the Whiffenpoofs' 100th anniversary, which was actually one of the first big events that I helped to organize.
This is while you were still at Yale.
Yeah. So I was a senior. The Whiffenpoofs take a year off, so I was taking a year off singing and doing all that stuff. And we ended up convincing Jonathan and Hodgman to come and MC this show. So I got to know them. I got Jonathan's actual email address. And later that year, I saw him at Toad's Place, a venue in town, playing a show. And at the end of the show, I was like, if you ever need an assistant, man, I'm graduating. I could really use a gig. Didn't end up doing anything with that. Got a consulting job, worked at a bank, cried in my cubicle every day, hated it. And one night had set up drinks with Jonathan to just see if there was still an opportunity. It had been 2 years. And I showed up late and too drunk and unloaded my 22-year-old heart on him about how much I hated my job and everything. And he was like, "It sounds like you should quit. I don't want to tank your life." But so I ended up doing that without really much of a plan, but started working for him, answering his fan mail, and then driving his tour van. And at some point he was like, "Would you shop around for cruise booking software? Because we need to sell this cruise to people." And I looked around and there was just nothing online. I studied computer science. So I was like, well, I don't really know how to make a web page, but I bet I could cook something up. So I made my first web page, which was the JoCoCruise 2012 booking engine. And then they asked me to come on the cruise as a prize for doing that. So I was just a guest on the 2012 cruise. But I'd been on the road with Jonathan right before that. We toured. We were touring, and mostly I was driving and selling the merch. But Jonathan would drive every once in a while, and I'd tether my phone to his phone to my computer and start editing the booking software because we were still making changes. And then sometimes we go in the back seat and play Magic the Gathering too. This is a really long version of the story. I can give you a shorter version.
No, this is great.
But so that was, I was 20, I was a 23-year-old mess. The first booking engine I think I wrote exclusively between 4 p.m. and 4 a.m. while smoking weed and binge watching Sex and the City. And so it was really awesome when it didn't crash. But yeah, I went on that first cruise, and because I was really in sync with Jonathan and his band, was just helping out and sending out little performer bulletins to keep everyone on the same page. And so yeah, then I basically, they brought me on as staff for the cruise after that, and been refining the software over the years. And eventually, I think in 2014, the Jonathan, Paul, and Storm were kind enough to essentially buy me into the partnership, with my contribution or my buy-in being a license to use the software for this cruise. And so then it was kind of switching from being the temp kid getting paid hourly to being an owner has been an interesting evolution. Just a second.
Yep.
So yeah, that's been the evolution, and it's kind of now about trying to figure out what my role is here and how I can expand what I'm doing in my own life, but also keep building the JoCoCruise and like our year-round team and our onboard team.
Yeah, because you're working on this year-round, either preparing for next year or...
Yeah, there's an 18-month planning cycle for these where we'll sign the contract for the ship 18 months out before we sail. Ideally, sometimes it happens later. And then prepare the booking engine for the next year, load in all the cabins, bring in everyone's past cruiser history, and there's some technical debt in there, so it's not always perfect. But yeah, and then throughout, maybe starting about a year out or after the cruise ends, we then start working on our documents to share with the ship, our changes for next year. And that's heavily based on the survey forms, the guest feedback that we get. So everyone in management and everyone who works year-round sort of pores over those forms. And that's where we take the sort of framework from the previous year and then apply the modifications based on guest feedback and our own feedback. And this year we actually also have reports from all of our key staff every day, which includes sort of their feedback for next year. So there's also operational tweaks along with sort of character of the event type tweaks.
In the first year, how big was your operation? Like what was your staff size like, and what was the actual attendance like? And then for now this is year 8.
Yeah, so
how has that changed?
2011 was the first JoCoCruise that was organized through a different cruise broker, and the only staff on board were Paul, Storm, and Jonathan. There were about 300 guests. 2012, when I came on, that was the first time that we handled booking in-house. We switched cruise brokers to Worldwide, who we've been working with since then, and we had 650 or so guests. And at that time, there was me, a woman named Liz Smith, who was also involved doing stage managing stuff. And that is the entirety of the crew. We were using ship's audio staff, and we had a number of volunteers. So that was the first year that a Helper Monkey Corps, which is our core of volunteers, were sort of standardized. I think we maybe had 20 or so volunteers. So they bucket brigaded all of our boxes of supplies on. And I think we bought a printer last minute at the hotel, and one of the guests in our block canceled. So we had a little interior storage cabin that was just full of boxes and had a printer in it, and we'd run around in there. And we were still a group. So there's group cruising where you buy a block of cabins, and there's not that much risk on a group cruise. You have these attrition clauses in the contract. You're able to get more inventory if they have it, give back inventory of cabins on the schedule. So you're not making a massive outlay of cash that's completely non-refundable. And the downside of that is that you're sharing the cruise ship with a standard cruise, like the dancing shows and all of the normal cruise operations. So that was the negotiation up until 2017, was how do we run this cruise in the background of a regular cruise without upsetting the experience for the retail cruise guests, or snorks as they were called. And now we're on the charter plan, and so that requires a lot more advance notice, because we have to book the ship, block it out of being sold to regular guests through Holland America, and we're the only ones who can sell that voyage. And we have a lot more customization options, but it takes a lot more time. Oh, but I didn't answer the rest of your question about staff.
Yeah, so how big are you at now with 8 years of growth? And
so now, fast forward to 2018, now we have a staff of about 60, volunteer crew of over 100. And the staff, we've got maybe 8 people who are on audio production. That's stage managers, stage hands, guitar techs, main theater audio, and then 2 other audio production people who are running around the ship doing the shadow cruise and the secondary event setups. And one of them is our head of audio production, who's been on, I think, 25 charter cruises. So he's an expert on working with the ship and making things possible in these kind of confined spaces. Yeah, office staff of 12, hospitality crew taking care of our VIPs, running the special green room bar that we have for them. There are about 8 people there. We bring our own bartenders. And who else have we got? We've got Tara, who runs our volunteer operation. She's got some people working for her. And yeah, it's a fun time. And actually the way that we staff it is that I staff my office is I've got a bunch of college a cappella friends and other college friends. So I promise them that they'll do a maximum of 6 hours of work a day. They'll be off for dinner. and that their job will be easy enough that they can do it with a light buzz. So we try and keep it really fun for them, so that they want to come back, and that keeps a fun collegial atmosphere, and they do their own weird, goofy stuff and have a little a cappella concert on board too.
Yeah, having a good balance is an important part of staff satisfaction from the other shows I've worked with and other people I've talked to about their shows. It can always be tricky. The one thing that some people have had issues with is actually recruiting, where they don't have enough people. How has that gone? What is it easy? Is it hard with this show? Because it feels unique to me. I don't know of any other charter cruise that's quite like this, so it has a different pull than a convention center Comic-Con or a hotel anime show or something.
Yeah, cruises are on their own are specific, and this one is incredibly specific. And recruiting staff, it's a balance, and the ones who I recruit directly are the office staff, and yeah, it's mostly friends. There is a core group of 4 singers that I know from college who've been on everyone since 2015. And usually once staff comes, they're excited to come back. But the initial convincing can take months, and because they've got to request time off. They all have regular jobs. Actually, our intern crew this year is so overqualified. Joel, who is the editor for the Sea Monkey, is on Fulbright in Genoa, putting together his PhD on medieval history. So he writes all those silly blurbs on the front of the Sea Monkey. Nathaniel, who wrangles the intern staff, runs operations for this computing and schools nonprofit. We've got, let's see, what other fun overqualified people? Yeah, Christian Griffin, who runs the Green Room Bar, recently managed to get in the 100th percentile on his MCAT and is going to med school next year. I didn't even know that was a possibility. Yeah, and then Zola, who's a new intern this year, she's working on board booking. She's at Yale Med right now. I'm really we've got a couple. Got a Microsoft guy who works on Office, and then my computer science buddy is also here, and he works at some startup, but he got me through operating systems, and it's just a total genius, and it's so amazing to have him here. He's putting together the daily reports and working out our offload paperwork right now. So yeah, it's a lucky setup, and it's kind of tricking them or making them feel like it's fun, and they're all hanging out. They go up on the back deck and sing together, and so it's been I guess recruiting is tough, but because they're friends, it's also pretty fun for me.
Other shows, you become family with your staff, even if you didn't know them beforehand. But if you knew them beforehand, going through an adventure like this brings you so much closer.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's great to have that feeling with your staff.
Oh yeah, and I mentioned this. We had a little staff thank you party last night, and when I get down throughout the year, I think about how cool it is that I do this very weird thing that requires all of this preparation, and then it sort of all explodes in this 1-week extravaganza where we go from a year-round staff of 5 to a staff of 60, and plus the 800 crew on the ship. And I'm just really moved and grateful that so many friends of mine have come together to help, and that I have these people who I can rely on. And as my job has changed from being the guy running around doing stuff to being the guy smiling at everybody and asking them to do stuff, I'm really fortunate and really happy that that's something that I get to do.
Is that your core motivation, I guess, is the joy it brings you, or are there other service issues, or why do you love this? Why do you want to keep doing it? What motivates you to keep doing it and make it better?
I guess 2 things. First, the nerd part. I'm a computer programmer, and logistics are just very cool to me. I love that I get to assemble this cargo from across the country and do all the customs paperwork and see, last year was our first year where we filled up a whole semi-truck with our stuff, and I'm in the loading dock bringing it onto the ship, and then I'm down on A deck in the hold receiving all of it and cutting open this stuff and taking it around. There's just something when you're programming a computer, you don't see the results, or you just see an output. It does all this beautiful stuff behind the scenes. It has no visual or physical representation whatsoever, whereas running this cruise, it's all physical. The manifestation of our work, we codify everything. We write out the job descriptions, we write out a memo for the ship, and then eventually it all comes to life, and it's just neat. and there are a lot of details and like kind of parsing the ship's org chart so that you can understand. And you're working with Holland America, like at the pier, for example, on load-in. We've got the Inner Cruises, which is a vendor that does the check-in staff. There's the longshoremen who are unionized and must touch, like anything that gets lifted or moved, they got to do. Then you've got the wrangler for the longshoremen, and then you've got our shipping broker who helps us out. We've got our cruise broker who's there, our Holland America line corporate contact, and then the people on the ship, and just like this, managing this kind of mess of people and understanding who you need to talk to and how to move things through that process is just really interesting. And I know that all my answers are overlong, but the other side of it is that the cruise is really special, not just to me or the great times that I've had on it, but I think there's something kind of magical about this thing. And I think the cruise is a place where the Sea Monkeys and a lot of the staff, I think, feel more at home than they do anywhere else and feel able to be themselves. So there's a guest who I think on the 2012 cruise began the public part of her transition on the 2012 cruise after listening to a talk with George on the way on the plane, that's a Jonathan Colton song, sort of about following your dreams. And so I check in with her every year, and I just get to see so many people who are so happy. I also see people who are pretty upset. But there was this moment like 3-4 nights ago on the back deck where I was singing with a few friends, and we were just hanging out, and then one of the Sea Monkeys came up to us in our circle where we're singing, and she was crying, just bawling, and we didn't quite know why, and she was standing really close to us, and then moved into the center, and we didn't really know what to make of it, but we finished the song, and then she looked at us and explained, "I'm going deaf. I haven't been able to hear any of the shows on the ship. I was a singer, and this is the first time I've heard music in 2 years," because she was just like so right there. And yeah, I just like those little like touch points of like really someone being super happy, and it's rarely, if ever, gets to be me who makes them happy in a direct way. But it just, I don't know. There's something really, I think everyone has a few of those moments on this trip where it's like something really clicked.
Thank you so much, Drew. That was a touching story. Yeah, thank you. And I have those feelings myself for this ship, and this cruise. Like, my first year was last year, and while we were on the shore in Loretto last year, I booked for this year. And then as soon as I heard they were going on sale, I immediately booked for next year, all based on that experience of the previous year, because of that feeling of home and specialness and the safety of being open with each other. And it is really powerful.
It's cool. Yeah.
Thank you for enabling that experience for so many people.
That's the job. I'm happy. That's the cool part. And yeah, I don't know. Just on the subject of like mushy stories, because I think we got like a minute or two. Yeah, but on the subject of mushy stories, I think it happens for the performers too, that this really helps them open up. Like, we found out that the reason Amy Mann came on her first JoCoCruise was that she waited too long to say no to the email and just felt like she really had to do it. And now she's like obsessed with the cruise in this weird way, because normally she's a sort of removed, reserved person. But I don't know. I had this, and that performers feel comfortable workshopping their stuff. Maria Bamford, a comedian, is doing this morning comedy show at 8 a.m. every day where she's trying out new material. Or Molly Lewis, who plays the ukulele, brought out her Hillary song. Did you see that? She wrote this song called Pantsuit Sasquatch about the rumors of Hillary like just walking through the woods. But yeah, that song I was really moved hearing her sing that song, because it was this really lovely expression of like just grief about what has been happening in the country. And obviously, the cruise doesn't take overt political stances, but I think it's been hard for everyone. And what really struck me when Molly sang that song was how easy it is to just be mad all the time, because it's easier than being heartbroken. And like, I think like being on the ship, not having the internet, being able to be yourself and run around and like take that time to be away from the shore, be away from everything, just be with your friends, and to like let go of some of the tension of the last year. That's been the coolest thing about this trip this year for me.
Thanks.
JoCoCruise.com, JoCoCruise.com, and you can book, you can see if my software has any bugs, and it definitely does. And we would love to have you on the 2019 cruise, that's for sure.
Awesome. Thank you so much for your time, Drew.
Yeah, thank you. Nice talking with you.
Since this recording, the 2019 cruise has sold out, but there is a waitlist available on the website. Show notes and a feedback form are available at conventionalpodcast.com, and you can reach out to me on Twitter at conventionalpod or by email at conventionalpodcast@gmail.com. Please let me know if you have any comments about the show or suggestions for guests. Thanks for listening.
JoCoCruise 2020, everybody gets a chicken.